what initially happened on Sunday, it was distant and far, and it wasn't really on our doorstep, right? Monday morning, we woke to the sound of gunfire. That wasn't, all of a sudden, it became very real. And it was the information sharing and dissemination of information through Rion that actually helped drive the mobilization of people. Because people said we cannot stand by and let our town be looted. So there was almost this unanimous call to arms, not call to arms, but call to action, to get people to the bridges to protect our town. When I arrived there at 6:15 on Saturday, on the Tuesday morning, it was pandemonium. The guys had done what they could, but there was no real structure, nobody really knew what they were going to do. But everybody had ideas and everybody wanted to help. While we formalized it and got ourselves ready, we then just put our cars and our bodies on the line. You know, the people of Ballito were awesome. There were hundreds of people at every single one of these points. But I stayed for the whole of Tuesday on the bridge, making sure that we got structure. And by 7 or 8 o'clock that evening, I'd somehow now been deputized as the informal head of this security thing. And guys were asking me, no, I was going to do the same at the Sharkers Head, I was going to do the same at Tiffany's. And I said, I don't have that luxury. Let me send people and let them do the same thing. So it was at that stage when I bumped into you with the Ballito Bridge, if I remember correctly. And then Warwick was saying, no, this can't be this disorganized, informalized thing. We need to set up some sort of structure. And I said to you, well, go ahead, do what you need to do, put him in touch with Rion. And then that's, I think, where the GBOC sort of formed. I think that's where I hand over to you.
So what's interesting about hearing that is, I actually had a fairly established relationship with Rion beforehand. But Mark would have no idea about that. This thing was so organic and it just kind of fell together because it had to, right? The air traffic controller, that was me at that, in that moment, kind of sort of starting to figure out that this was a role that needed to exist. Rion was another one who played that role. Sean Blichnote was another one who played that role. There were many people who emerged during the process to play that role. Grabbed that message and made sure that the people on the Ballito Bridge were aware that this car was probably coming their way and they should intercept it. They did intercept it. And they arrested 2 guys, it means not say arrested, but they detained 2 guys, and the car was chock full of looted goods. That kind of story that I just said there probably happened 8 times during the course of the whole process. And every time, so SAPS wasn't there, obviously, they were out fighting fires elsewhere. And every time we would phone SAPS, we'd let them know what had happened, and then they'd come and pick the guys up. SAPS might even phone back and say, please do X, Y, and Z to make sure that we have the evidence that we need before we come and pick the guys up. So right in that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, during that heady period there was a very close collaboration with SAPS that worked really well.
Millionaires, as I said, unemployed people standing shoulder to shoulder, unemployment police protecting those stores. What's become of that now is we've garnered such trust between us that those bridges now are actual bridges reaching out into the community. It's now one community. Everybody sees, for the first time, it never happened. It's always been this 2 separate little towns within a town. It's almost like Ballito and Saltrock are also these 2 separate towns. People will say I'm from Saltrock or I'm from Ballito, but it's now one town, one sort of united Ballito. What was also quite interesting, the Canada Estate, Monday night was under attack. They had 3 or 4 or 5 petrol bombs thrown over the fence. They were fighting fires and there was gunshot going off all over. And take that and move forward 5 days to Saturday morning. Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. People from Shortens, people from Caledon were out in Sharkers Head, I should say, helping clean the mess from Monday. There were kids from Sharkers Head playing with the kids from the estates. you can't believe how far a town and how far we could go in 5 days. So we now need to work on ensuring those bridges are still bridges and that the highway no longer divides us.
Yeah. What I want to emphasize is that without the security companies in particular, those guys did a lot of the hard fighting. At times where it was really good. Without them, and without the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guys and girls who put up their hands in a terrifying time to man those checkpoints day and night, we wouldn't be sitting.
What was interesting for me is what was key was getting us all focused on the same goal.
Yeah.
And the minute everybody understood what the goal was, and I think that's what we did through the GBOC, because we created a goal. Guys, we need to protect our malls, because that's our food chain, that's our future, that's our survival. Other parts of the province are going to struggle. There's hundreds of millions, billions of rands damage. We could see the problem coming, the issue rising up. And when everybody was clear on that goal, as we were saying earlier on, there was never a no. No matter who you asked what, it was delivered. It was like a magic, you had like a magic free pass on everything that you asked for. This is not a Warwick and Mark show. I mean, the CPF came on board, the Neighbourhood Watch came on board, SAPS came on board, KDM came on board. Initially when the barriers came down, I think that was the next sort of drama. We'd fended off KDM, we'd come to an agreement to work together versus taking the barriers down. We'd committed to opening our town to other people, but the trust wasn't there with people coming in. We just made to make sure. But as we opened up the doors, we got more and more used to people coming in. Guys became clever at screening cars, and then eventually we opened it all up. And it was, okay, this huge collective sigh of relief. Sunday morning, I'm now deciding, okay, this is now day 3, I think, of retail, or day 2 of retail. Let's actually make sure that we get things right. We've got a plan. The second day worked well, so we don't really have too much of an issue. We don't have to have guys marshalling traffic, because the second day we're prepared for the errors of the first day. And I get a call that there's a national commissioner or a regional commissioner or station commander. They're telling the barriers must go down. So I go rushing off and I stand my ground. Not that we were trying to be obstructive, but the people within both sides of the highway don't want the barriers to come down, because if the barriers came down, the store shut, and what we'd broken would fall apart.
Yeah.
Because we were then, so we really at that stage were boxing and fighting for our survival, and fighting for this agreement that we had broken with so many parties, the taxi association, it really was a challenge. So at that specific point, once again we tried the diplomacy route. Please can SAPS come with us, please can SAPS come and sit around the table and let's have a discussion. So I won't say it was a negotiation. Okay, it was quite a one-sided discussion, because the instruction had come down all the way from the top, and there was no real room for error. But we got some concessions, we got some agreement. While we had a marathon 6.5-hour meeting with SAPS, Gary Francis from the CPF, myself, were then formulating a strategy as to what does a security situation look like without barriers.
And that's when you formed the observation posts.
Well, we hadn't got there yet. So now we didn't have the community leaders at that meeting, because SAPS didn't want to engage with a bigger forum, they just wanted to engage with the GBOC. And the short notice that was provided, we didn't have to get all the role players around. So Warwick and I had certain agreements. We had already formulated our strategy and what we were going to go discuss with the community leaders. Hastily, we were trying to arrange a meeting. We then were informed that there's an MSNBC reporter that had flown in from overseas who was now going to be interviewing people at the bridge. Not us, but individuals at the bridge, and that in itself not a great situation to be in. So we go rushing off to the bridge, only to run into David Mklobo, the former Minister of Intelligence, and his entourage. He's now, I think, the Deputy Minister of Transport, and we have a big conversation, but we have a ticking clock. The barriers need to be down by 5, otherwise him and I are going to be spending a night behind bars. That's the discussion. So we're like, Minister, you know, we really want to, Minister, we've got a meeting, Minister, we also want to understand from him what the government is doing. And we got, really, I must say, I got a sense of comfort that the government has plans to bring those who've done this to book.
Yes.
And that's very, very important. The questions we asked and the answers we got were candid, direct, and not made up. You could sense that immediately. So we bid our farewells, and then we raced to the community meeting. And we had literally probably 45 minutes at that stage. We got there quarter past 3. We had 45 minutes to convince the 40 people that we had. I don't think we had quite 40, I think we were down to about 12 or so at that stage. That what we have is a plan that can work. What we have, the retail guys are happy with, and we could proceed.
Including the taxes.
But what we didn't have time to was not to communicate to the Ballito residents. So I then had, after the meeting, left at 3 minutes past 4 from our meeting point, rushed around and removed the barriers. By the time I now got back to get to the people who were not happy, they were now dealing with the social media outburst like, how can this Mark Whitehead guy just come and take down our barriers? Okay, I'm a turncoat, I've rolled over, I'm a patsy for the police. I had every conceivable thing leveled against me. But I then did what I did every single day and have done to today, is I spoke to the people candidly and said, let me explain to you why they came down. Let me explain to you what we're going to do and how we are going to fall within the gamut of the law, fall under the CPF, and make sure that what we have is legal. So that SAPS is a partner and a player and not an opponent. Because what we don't want to do is put ourselves in a situation where we are at loggerheads with the South African Police Service. That doesn't work. KDM had been on board all along. They were quite happy to play the role that they had played before, so it was great. But getting the people at the checkpoints not to lose faith was a major problem because we didn't have time for communication. It's been this emotional roller coaster ride. There was never enough time, there was never enough hours in the day. We were working 21-hour days every day and have been doing that for the last 9 days. But what kept us motivated was these individuals and their safety and their concerns and the businesses, and it worked.
And I think this is important, that during a crisis, people pull together. Why do they pull together? Because they have focus. There's, as Mark pointed out, once everyone knew what they were doing, everyone toed the line and focused on doing what they needed to do. You had people who were kind of sworn enemies in peacetime, who put those differences aside and were working with one another. Obviously, now that the crisis has subsided, those divisions and differences have started to re-emerge. And I think the opportunity is to try and find out how we can create a structure, an initiative or something like that that helps us to acknowledge and rise above those differences and still try to coordinate and streamline integration and coordination and collaboration with our community. So, you know, that's the one side. The other side, inevitably being asked, is if something like this happens again, how do we make sure that we respond quickly, and how do we make sure that we have all of the measures in place that we didn't during the first couple of days that we absolutely should have? What happens if someone gets injured? What's our evacuation plan? Do we have first aid kits on the scene? Do we have a doctor on the scene? Do we have a paramedic or someone else with first aid experience on the scene? You know, there were a lot of things that we weren't able to put in place in those first heady days of the crisis that we would like to be as well prepared for as possible. So you know, in a nutshell, I think that's the challenge, and I'm quite interested in working together with people like Mark, some of the business community leadership, with Gary and Morna and the other guys from the CPF, and it's really crucial to understand that any sort of citizen force security component has to be part of the CPF. So we have to find a way of legitimizing what's been built in the long term as part of the CPF. So I think there's massive opportunity, but you know, personally, I'm really keen to get back to work. I'm keen for life to return to normality, But I also don't want us to lose or discard the tremendous amount of effort that has gone into building really a very valuable piece of infrastructure for our community.
Yeah, Warwick, what also really excites me about that is what you guys have been saying is that it's not Ballito and Salt Rock and Sharper's Head. We are one community.
Yeah.
And if going forward we can actually operate as one community, I think it could break down a lot of the barriers that have been along the edge that we've been speaking about.
The barriers are gone.
Exactly.
I think it's the opportunities for the future, and this is what Warwick was saying about what does the GBOC actually do. So our current agenda or our current mission was to save our town and save our mall.
Yeah.
So what we need to do as a collective is decide what is that next mission. So what is the next thing we're going to focus and align on? That becomes the mission of the GBOC, right? In terms of reactions and formalizing it, what I would envisage that we have the ability to mobilize to address a crisis. Hopefully we never see anything like we've seen now again in our lifetimes, but other crises can happen. You know, heaven help, there's a tsunami or something of that nature. It would have to have the same sort of response to deal with. I mean, almost the humanitarian crisis of it. Now we've gained a heck of a lot of IP, which we mustn't lose. You know, because if we let that go, we've let a very significant opportunity go. That being said, what we are doing, other communities are doing as well. We've reached out and engaged with similar platforms in other parts of KZN and saying, okay, share with us what you're doing. We in turn will share with you what we're doing. We'll overlay them and we'll be able to see what's the best practice and then revise our plan with best practices.